"You can send me back," whispered the mail-order bride. The cowboy replied, "My boy chose you." The young woman, named Maya, had never imagined her life would lead her to a distant, dusty town far from the city she had grown up in. Her past had been filled with struggle, with small victories that seemed to vanish as quickly as they came. She had learned early on that life was not fair, that opportunities were rare, and that survival often meant making choices she did not fully understand. When she first heard about the possibility of becoming a mail-order bride, the idea had frightened her. Yet, she also knew it might be the only way to escape the constant weight of worry and uncertainty that had followed her for as long as she could remember. Maya spent nights imagining what life might be like on a ranch. She pictured endless fields of dry grass, the slow rhythm of farm chores, and a quiet home where she would not need to explain herself every day. She reminded herself that this was not about romance. It was about creating stability, a place where she could breathe, even for a little while. With nothing left to tie her to her old life, she made the difficult decision to take the journey, carrying with her only a small suitcase of essentials and a cautious hope that things might turn out better than she feared. The journey was long and tiring. She traveled through busy towns and empty roads, seeing landscapes she had only dreamed about. She watched mountains rise in the distance, rivers snake through valleys, and fields stretch endlessly under the sun. With each passing mile, her excitement mixed with anxiety. What kind of man would she meet? Would she be able to adapt to life on a ranch? She had no answers, only questions and the quiet, gnawing fear that she might have made a mistake she could never undo. When she arrived at the ranch, the first thing that struck her was the silence. The city had been loud, alive, filled with people, cars, and constant chatter. Here, the only sounds were the soft rustle of leaves, the occasional crow of a rooster, and the distant lowing of cows. It felt vast, almost empty, and Maya felt her chest tighten as she stepped out of the carriage. She had expected hard work, but she had not expected to feel so small in such a big place. The man she came to meet, Jackson, was a quiet, reserved man in his early 40s. He had broad shoulders, a weathered face, and eyes that seemed to carry the weight of many years. His hands were strong and calloused from work on the ranch. When he first saw Maya, he offered a polite nod and a small smile, but there was an invisible wall between them, built from years of solitude and loss. Maya noticed that he did not speak much, and when he did, it was with careful, deliberate words. She realized quickly that this was a man who did not waste his energy on unnecessary conversation, and she felt a mix of relief and fear, relief that he would not overwhelm her, and fear that she might never truly connect with him. Jackson's son, Ethan, was a different story. The boy was 8 years old, with wide, curious eyes and a cautious smile. He had seen enough pain in his short life to make him wary of strangers. Maya could sense it immediately. Ethan did not rush to greet her or welcome her with open arms. Instead, he watched her from a distance, his gaze steady, almost analytical. Maya understood that earning his trust would be harder than she had imagined. She felt a pang of guilt. What if she was not the right person to step into this fragile little family? The first few days were the hardest. Maya had to learn the routines of the ranch, from feeding animals to mending fences, from cooking simple meals to cleaning rooms that seemed to accumulate dust faster than she could sweep it away. Each task was unfamiliar, each moment a reminder that she was in a world completely different from the one she had known. The sun was harsh, the chores were endless, and her muscles ached in ways she had never felt before. At night she would lie in bed, exhausted and lonely, wondering if she had made a terrible mistake. Yet, despite the exhaustion, there were small moments of quiet beauty. Maya would watch the sun rise over the fields, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink. She would listen to the soft neighing of horses in the morning, or the sound of wind rustling through the trees. She began to notice details she had never paid attention to in her city life. The way the earth smelled after rain, the way the light fell across the rolling hills, the way Ethan's laughter could suddenly break through the silence and bring warmth to a room. These small details became her anchor, little reminders that life here, though different, had its own rhythm and moments of joy. Jackson observed her silently as she struggled and adapted. He did not offer guidance unless it was necessary, but he watched her efforts closely. There was something in Maya that he noticed immediately: resilience. She was not someone who would give up easily. Even when she fell behind on chores or made mistakes, she tried again. There was determination in the way she held herself, a quiet strength that spoke louder than words. Jackson respected that, though he kept it to himself. He knew that trust would not be given immediately, but earned, and he was willing to give her the space to prove herself. Ethan, however, was another challenge. The boy was polite but distant. He had seen women come and go before, and he was not eager to let anyone into his life. Maya knew that the boy's trust was not something she could demand. It had to be given freely over time. She made small efforts, helping him with chores, listening when he wanted to talk, and slowly becoming a familiar presence in the quiet moments of the ranch. Sometimes he would watch her from the window as she worked in the fields, and she would wave, smiling gently. Slowly, ever so slowly, he began to respond. Despite the small progress, Maya could not shake the feeling of being an outsider. At night, after the day's work was done, she would sit by the window, looking out at the fields, and think about the life she had left behind. She thought about the streets of the city, the friends she had lost, the family she had struggled to support. She wondered if she had made the right choice, if she belonged here at all. The loneliness was heavy, and sometimes it felt unbearable. She began to question her decision, wondering if Jackson would understand if she asked to leave. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills and painted the sky in deep shades of red, Maya found herself sitting quietly in the kitchen, exhausted from the day. She had finished preparing dinner, cleaned the dishes, and even managed to read a story to Ethan before he went to bed. Yet her heart felt heavy. The weight of uncertainty pressed on her chest, and she realized she could not keep pretending that everything was okay. She turned to Jackson, who was sitting across the table, quietly reading a letter from town, and spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. "You can send me back," she said. The words hung in the air, fragile and uncertain. She did not want to cause trouble, and she did not want to make him feel guilty. She only wanted him to know the truth, that she was tired, scared, and unsure if she could belong here. Jackson looked at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. There was no anger, no surprise, only a quiet understanding. He did not speak immediately, and Maya feared that she had overstepped, that she had ruined the fragile connection she was beginning to build with the boy and the ranch. Yet in his silence there was something else, something she could not name. The moment marked the first real honesty between them. For the first time, Maya had spoken her fear aloud, and she realized that perhaps this was the start of something more genuine. She did not yet know what the future held, and the uncertainty still loomed over her like the vast sky above the ranch. But for the first time, she also felt a flicker of hope, the hope that honesty, no matter how difficult, could be the first step toward finding a place where she belonged. That night, as she lay in bed, listening to the soft sounds of the ranch settling into darkness, Maya understood something important. Life here would not be easy. She would face challenges, loneliness, and moments of doubt. But it also held the possibility of something new, a chance to grow, to heal, and perhaps, in time, to find a quiet joy she had never known before. And with that thought, she finally allowed herself to close her eyes, letting the rhythm of the ranch and the quiet strength of the land cradle her into an uneasy but hopeful sleep. The days that followed were not easy for Maya. Life on the ranch was demanding in ways she had never anticipated. Every morning, before the sun had even risen, She was up helping Jackson with chores. Feeding the animals, cleaning the stables, mending fences, and preparing breakfast became her daily routine. The work was exhausting, and her body ached constantly, but she continued because she knew there was no other option. At the same time, there was a small satisfaction in the rhythm of the chores. Each task, though difficult, brought her closer to understanding the life Jackson and Ethan lived. She began to notice patterns, small routines that repeated like a quiet music in the background of the ranch. Maya's struggle to adapt was more than just physical, it was emotional. She felt like an outsider in a place that was supposed to be her new home. Jackson was polite but distant, his words always measured and careful. He spoke when necessary, but there were no easy conversations, no attempts at small talk or connection. Maya tried to engage him, asking questions about the ranch, the animals, and his routines, but he often replied briefly, leaving her feeling even more isolated. It was clear that Jackson had learned to live with his solitude, and she was trying to find her place within it. Ethan, too, was a challenge. The boy's trust was not easy to earn. He had experienced enough changes and disappointments in his short life to be cautious. He watched Maya constantly, his eyes studying her actions, noting the way she moved and spoke. He did not hide his judgment, and sometimes it felt like she was being tested. At first, she felt frustrated and helpless, unsure how to reach him or how to make him feel comfortable around her. She began to understand that this was not about completing chores or performing tasks correctly. It was about becoming a familiar and safe presence in a home that had experienced too much uncertainty. Maya tried to connect with Ethan in small ways. She would bring him an extra piece of fruit during breakfast, read him stories before bedtime, and try to laugh at his jokes even when they were not funny. Slowly, small cracks appeared in the wall of caution he had built around himself. One morning, she found him waiting for her at the edge of the barn, holding a small bundle of wildflowers he had picked from the field. He did not say much, only nodded toward her with a shy smile. Maya accepted the flowers, thanking him softly, and in that moment she felt the tiniest spark of connection. It was fragile, but it was there. Despite these small victories, Maya's heart was heavy. Every evening, after the chores were done and Ethan had gone to bed, she would sit quietly in the kitchen, staring at the walls and thinking about the life she had left behind. She missed the noise and chaos of the city, even with all its problems. She missed her friends, the familiarity of streets she knew by heart, and the little comforts of a life that, though difficult, had been hers. She felt a constant tug of longing for the past, coupled with the harsh reality that she had chosen this path for a reason: survival, stability, and a chance at a new beginning. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills and the sky turned shades of orange and pink, Maya felt a surge of doubt. The work had been hard that day, the animals restless, and the chores endless. She had tried to teach Ethan how to milk the cows, but he had grown frustrated and left in a huff. She had prepared dinner, but it had burned slightly, and she knew Jackson had noticed. Sitting at the table, exhausted and emotionally drained, she realized she could no longer pretend that she was content. Her voice barely above a whisper, she repeated the words she had spoken before: "You can send me back." Jackson looked up from the papers he was sorting, his expression calm and unreadable. He did not respond immediately. There was no anger, no irritation, only the quiet presence of a man who understood the weight of her words. Maya waited, her heart racing, expecting rejection or disappointment, but Jackson's voice, when it finally came, was steady and measured. "My boy chose you," he said simply. The words hit her unexpectedly. She blinked, trying to understand. It was not a grand declaration or a promise of love. It was an acknowledgement, a quiet truth that she mattered more than she had realized. At first, Maya did not know how to respond. She felt a mix of relief, surprise, and guilt. Relief because she was not being sent away, surprise because she had not expected Jackson to consider her presence important, and guilt because she had doubted herself so openly. She realized in that moment that her journey was not just about her survival, it was also about the boy who had chosen her as part of his life, even if she had yet to fully earn Jackson's trust. From that day, Maya began to see her new life differently. She still struggled with the work, the loneliness, and the vastness of the ranch, but she began to notice the small ways in which she had become part of the household. Ethan would greet her with a smile in the mornings, sometimes ask for help with chores, and occasionally share a story about school or the animals. Jackson began to engage with her more, giving instructions with a tone that suggested respect and quiet approval. These small gestures were subtle, but they mattered deeply to Maya. Life on the ranch had its challenges, of course. There were days when the weather was harsh, when chores seemed endless, and when she felt utterly alone. The animals could be unpredictable, the fences always needed mending, and the land required constant care. Yet, there were also moments of unexpected beauty and peace. Maya would stand in the early morning light, listening to the soft sounds of nature, and feel a sense of calm she had never known in the city. She began to appreciate the quiet strength of the land, the rhythm of work, and the simple satisfaction of tasks completed. Over time, Maya also began to reflect on her own resilience. She had arrived at the ranch uncertain, fearful, and unsure of herself. But each day she had faced challenges and adapted. She had learned to care for animals, manage the household, and connect slowly with Ethan. She realized that even in moments of doubt, she had grown stronger. Her presence on the ranch mattered, not because of grand gestures, but because of consistency, effort, and quiet determination. Ethan continued to be cautious, but he began to show small signs of trust and attachment. He would sometimes run to greet her in the morning, ask for her opinion on small matters, or even seek comfort when he felt scared or frustrated. These moments were precious to Maya, each one a small victory that reinforced her place in the household. She began to feel that she was no longer just a visitor in this home, but a part of its daily life, slowly weaving herself into the fabric of the ranch. Jackson, too, began to notice changes. He observed Maya's patience, her quiet care for Ethan, and her growing understanding of ranch life. Though he did not express it openly, he respected her efforts and began to include her more in decisions and daily routines. He recognized that she was not there out of obligation or convenience. She was there because she had chosen, despite her fears, to make a place for herself in their lives. As the weeks turned into months, the dynamics of the household shifted subtly but meaningfully. Maya began to feel a sense of belonging, though it was tentative and earned slowly. The silence of the ranch was no longer overwhelming. It became a companion, a backdrop to daily life rather than a reminder of isolation. She took pride in small accomplishments, like fixing a fence, cooking a meal without burning it, or helping Ethan with his schoolwork. Each achievement, however minor, strengthened her confidence and her connection to the people and the land around her. Evenings became a time for reflection and quiet connection. Maya would sit by the window, watching the sunset over the rolling hills, and feel a sense of calm she had never experienced in the city. Jackson would sometimes join her, and they would speak in low tones about the day's work or share observations about the animals. Ethan, occasionally, would sit nearby, listening quietly or offering a small comment. These moments, simple as they were, became the foundation of trust, understanding, and the beginning of a fragile but meaningful family bond. Maya's doubts did not vanish entirely. There were still moments of loneliness and fear, times when she wondered if she truly belonged, or if the boy and Jackson would ever fully accept her. Yet with each passing day, she realized that belonging was not about immediate acceptance or grand gestures. It was about persistence, care, and the willingness to remain present, even when things were difficult. She began to understand that her choice to stay, despite fear and uncertainty, was shaping the home she had once doubted she could be part of. By the end of her first year on the ranch, Maya had transformed in ways even she could not have predicted. She had grown stronger, more confident, and more connected to the land, Jackson, and Ethan. Her presence was no longer tentative. It had become a quiet but vital part of the household. She had learned that trust and belonging were not given instantly. They were earned through patience, effort, and care. And while she still carried memories of her past and occasional pangs of doubt, she also carried the knowledge that she had chosen this life. And in doing so, she had begun to build a home where she truly mattered. Maya woke up early that morning, as she always did, the first rays of sunlight streaming through the window. The ranch was quiet, almost serene, but she felt a nervous energy inside her. She had been thinking about Jackson's words from days ago, "My boy chose you." The simple sentence had stayed with her, replaying in her mind over and over. At first, she had barely understood it, but now, the meaning of those words was becoming clearer. It wasn't about obligation or convenience. It was about trust, acceptance, and the little boy's choice. Maya realized that Ethan had already accepted her in a way she hadn't yet allowed herself to notice. As she stepped into the kitchen, she saw Ethan sitting at the table, hunched over his homework. His small forehead was creased with concentration, and he did not notice her presence at first. Maya smiled softly, carrying a mug of warm milk. She placed it beside him without a word. The boy looked up, surprised but pleased, and nodded quietly in thanks. Small moments like these had become the threads of connection between them, building a bond that was quiet but strong. Maya knew that trust was fragile, yet it was being woven into the household every day, almost invisibly. Jackson entered the kitchen shortly after, his boots clicking softly against the wooden floor. He moved with a calm, measured pace, the kind that comes from years of hard work and patience. He did not speak immediately, merely observing the morning routines. Maya had learned to read the subtle cues in his expressions, the way he nodded at small successes, the slight relaxation in his shoulders when things went smoothly, the quiet satisfaction that rarely needed words. She had come to understand that Jackson expressed his approval differently, not through compliments, but through steady presence and quiet acknowledgement. The day began like many others, with chores and responsibilities. Maya fed the chickens and gathered eggs, tending to the animals with growing confidence. She worked alongside Jackson to repair a broken fence, their hands brushing occasionally as they passed tools back and forth. The small contact was not intimate, but it was human, a reminder that they were learning to work together, to share the labor and responsibilities of running a ranch. Maya felt a subtle sense of pride in her growing competence, a recognition that she was no longer just surviving, she was contributing, and it mattered. Ethan watched them work, his eyes bright with curiosity. He had grown more comfortable with Maya over the months, laughing at her small mistakes and offering help when he could. Today, he carried a bucket of feed, stumbling slightly but refusing to drop it. Maya knelt to steady the boy, offering a reassuring smile. "Careful," she said gently. "You're doing fine." Ethan grinned, proud of himself, and Maya felt warmth spread through her chest. This was the connection she had longed for, the mutual understanding and small joys of shared effort. By midday, the sun was high and the ranch was alive with activity. The cows lowed in the fields, the horses stamped their hooves impatiently, and the wind rustled the trees. Maya paused for a moment, looking out across the land, and felt a deep sense of belonging. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but undeniable. She had arrived at the ranch unsure of herself, unsure of her place, yet here she was, part of the rhythm of the day. The realization made her heart swell with quiet satisfaction. She understood, finally, that belonging was not instant. It was earned, nurtured, and quietly recognized. After lunch, Jackson asked Maya to help him sort through some supplies in the barn. As they worked side by side, he spoke more openly than usual, describing the chores that needed attention and sharing stories about the ranch's history. Maya listened attentively, appreciating the insight into a world she had only just begun to understand. Jackson's voice was calm but warm, and she noticed that he was beginning to include her in decisions, trusting her judgment and presence. It was a subtle shift, but a meaningful one. Later in the afternoon, Maya and Ethan went to gather firewood together. The boy chattered excitedly about the upcoming school play, asking questions about how to build the perfect fire and telling stories about his friends. Maya laughed often, enjoying the sound of his voice and the way his imagination seemed to spill over everything they did. The bond between them had grown stronger over time, rooted in patience, consistency, and small acts of care. Maya realized that Ethan's choice of her was not a fleeting whim. It was a trust built over months of shared moments, laughter, and quiet understanding. When they returned to the ranch, Jackson was waiting. He had a look of quiet approval on his face, the kind that spoke more than words ever could. He did not say much, simply nodded toward the boy and Maya and went about his tasks. Maya felt a surge of gratitude and respect. Jackson had been cautious, reserved, and slow to show acknowledgement, but she now understood that this was his way of honoring trust. It was not about grand statements or declarations. It was about consistent, measured acknowledgement of what truly mattered: family, care, and shared responsibility. That evening, Maya prepared dinner for the three of them. The aroma of the food filled the kitchen, and Ethan eagerly set the table, humming a tune as he worked. Jackson sat at the table quietly observing, yet there was a softness in his eyes that had not been there before. As they ate, the conversation flowed more naturally than it had in months. Ethan spoke of school, the animals, and small victories in his day. Maya shared stories of her childhood, laughter escaping her lips more easily than before. Jackson listened, occasionally offering a comment or observation, but mostly allowing them the space to connect. After dinner, Ethan ran off to fetch a book for his bedtime story, and Maya sat beside Jackson, quietly folding laundry. She hesitated for a moment, then spoke softly. "I've been thinking about what you said," she began, "about Ethan choosing me." Jackson glanced at her but did not interrupt, allowing her to continue. "At first, I didn't understand. I thought maybe I was just here to help, to keep things going, but now I see it differently. I feel like I belong here, even if it's just a little." Jackson's expression softened, a subtle acknowledgement that went deeper than words. "It's not about being perfect," he said quietly. "It's about being here, about showing up. Ethan trusts you, and so do I, in our own way. That's what matters." Maya felt a lump in her throat. The validation was simple, unassuming, yet profound. For the first time, she realized that belonging did not require grand gestures or perfect performance. It required patience, presence, and care, the very qualities she had been cultivating, often without realizing it. When Ethan returned with the book, Maya read to him, her voice gentle and steady. The boy listened intently, occasionally asking questions or pointing out illustrations, his trust and comfort evident in the ease of his movements and laughter. Jackson watched from a distance, leaning against the doorway, and Maya noticed a quiet pride in his posture. He did not interfere, he did not direct, he simply observed, allowing the bond between Maya and Ethan to flourish naturally. The night grew darker, and the ranch settled into its familiar rhythm of quiet and peace. Maya reflected on the day, the progress she and Ethan had made, and the subtle changes in Jackson's behavior. She realized that her presence had begun to make a real difference, not just in the household, but in the lives of the people she had come to care for. Trust had been earned, connections had been formed, and slowly the feeling of being an outsider was fading. She was no longer just surviving. She was living, contributing, and belonging. In the following weeks, this sense of belonging deepened. Maya found herself taking initiative in caring for the household and the animals, making small decisions that affected the daily life of the ranch. She began to anticipate Ethan's needs, preparing meals he liked, offering guidance when he struggled with tasks, and creating moments of joy and learning. Jackson, in turn, began to rely on her more, trusting her judgment and respecting her presence. The dynamic of the household shifted subtly but meaningfully, each action building on the other, strengthening the family bond that was quietly forming. One afternoon, as they worked together repairing a section of fence, Ethan climbed onto Maya's back in a playful attempt to reach a high post. She laughed, steadying him carefully as he balanced, and Jackson, watching from a distance, allowed himself a rare smile. The moment was ordinary, almost mundane, but it was filled with connection, trust, and the quiet warmth of family life. Maya understood then that family was not about perfection, but about showing up, caring, and slowly building trust through shared experience. By the end of part 3, Maya had begun to truly understand the significance of Jackson's words. Ethan's choice of her was not just a child's whim. It was a trust earned through patience, care, and presence. Jackson's acknowledgement was quiet but genuine, a subtle validation that she belonged in this household, in this life. The turning point was complete. Maya was no longer just a visitor or an outsider. She was an integral part of the family, slowly weaving herself into the fabric of their everyday life. The night closed over the ranch, the wind whispering softly through the trees, and Maya lay in bed reflecting on the transformation of the past months. She had arrived uncertain and fearful, questioning her worth and her place. Now she understood that belonging was not about grand gestures or declarations. It was about showing up, building trust, and caring quietly and consistently. The connection she had with Ethan and the subtle acknowledgement from Jackson had given her a sense of purpose and belonging she had never imagined possible. For the first time, Maya felt hope, steady, quiet, and enduring. She knew there would still be challenges, moments of doubt, and the inevitable hardships of life on the ranch. But she also knew that she was no longer alone, that her presence mattered, and that she had begun to build something real, something lasting, and something worth fighting for. And with that thought, she allowed herself to drift into sleep, comforted by the knowledge that she was finally, truly part of a family. Maya woke up to the soft glow of dawn, the light spilling across the wooden floor of the small bedroom she now called her own. The ranch was quiet except for the faint rustle of wind in the trees and the distant lowing of cows. As she stretched and rubbed her tired eyes, she felt a sense of calm and belonging that she had never known before. The days of fear, doubt, and uncertainty were slowly fading. She had come to realize that life on the ranch was not only about chores and survival. It was about being part of something bigger than herself, a life shaped by trust, love, and small everyday acts of care. Her first task of the morning was to prepare breakfast. The smell of fresh bread and eggs filled the kitchen, and soon Ethan joined her, bouncing in with energy that was contagious. "Good morning, Maya," he said, smiling brightly. "Can I help today?" Maya chuckled and handed him a small bowl of fruit to arrange for the table. Watching him work carefully, trying not to spill anything, Maya felt warmth spread through her chest. This was no longer a child she had to earn over time. He was her companion, her little friend, someone whose trust she had nurtured and whose happiness now mattered deeply to her. Jackson appeared quietly behind Ethan, his tall figure casting a shadow in the morning light. He gave Maya a small nod and moved to tend to the horses, a routine he had done countless times. Maya noticed how he no longer seemed as distant as before. His presence was still quiet, but now it carried a sense of appreciation and trust that he had not shown in the early days. Maya realized that their relationship had evolved. It was no longer just about her surviving in a new world. It was about mutual respect, shared responsibility, and understanding each other's strengths and weaknesses. The morning passed with the usual chores, feeding the animals, gathering firewood, and checking fences. Maya moved with growing confidence, her body strong from months of labor and her mind at ease with the rhythm of ranch life. She noticed how Jackson trusted her judgment now, often asking her opinion on matters large and small. "Do you think the fence will hold if we tie this post here?" he asked during a repair. Maya examined it carefully and nodded. "Yes, it should. But we can reinforce it on the other side just to be safe." Jackson simply nodded, a hint of a smile on his face. It was a small gesture, but it filled her with quiet pride. By midday, the sun was high and the ranch was alive with activity. Ethan ran around the yard, checking on the chickens and laughing as he chased a playful calf. Maya worked alongside him, guiding him gently when needed and laughing with him at his small mistakes. The bond between them had grown stronger over the months, rooted in patience, care, and shared experience. Ethan's trust had transformed into genuine affection, and Maya felt a deep sense of responsibility and joy in being a part of his life. After lunch, Jackson suggested they take a short break and rest under the shade of the large oak tree near the barn. Maya and Ethan sat on a blanket while Jackson leaned against the tree, watching them with quiet approval. The boy chatted endlessly about school, friends, and small adventures he imagined in the fields and forests around the ranch. Maya listened with genuine interest, asking questions and laughing when he told funny stories. She realized that these moments of connection were more meaningful than any grand event or gesture. They were the foundation of family, built through consistency, care, and shared experiences. As the afternoon wore on, Maya and Jackson worked together on repairing the barn roof. The work was challenging, requiring focus and coordination. Maya noticed how Jackson relied on her now, giving instructions with confidence and allowing her space to make decisions. She had earned his trust through months of persistence, effort, and quiet dedication. Even Ethan joined in, carefully handing tools and watching their movements with fascination. The three of them worked in harmony, a small family united by shared effort and mutual care. In the evening, Maya prepared dinner while Ethan set the table with his small hands. Jackson moved quietly around the kitchen, occasionally offering a comment or suggestion. The atmosphere was warm and calm, filled with laughter, conversation, and a sense of belonging. Maya reflected on how far they had all come, from the first awkward days when she felt out of place to now when her presence felt natural and essential. She understood that belonging was not immediate. It was earned over time, through patience, care, and persistence. After dinner, Ethan requested a bedtime story, as he often did. Maya smiled and agreed, leading him to his bedroom with a gentle hand on his shoulder. As she read, she noticed how relaxed and comfortable he had become, how easily he laughed at the funny parts and reacted to the suspenseful moments. She realized that he trusted her completely, and that trust had grown into something deeper, a genuine bond that had transformed both their lives. Jackson, standing quietly outside the room, watched for a moment before leaving them to their moment. The subtle acknowledgement in his eyes was enough for Maya to know that her place in the family was secure. The night brought with it a sense of reflection and quiet satisfaction. Maya sat by the window, looking out at the moonlit fields and listening to the soft sounds of the ranch settling into darkness. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, the fear, the uncertainty, and the doubt that had plagued her in the early days. Now she could see how each challenge had shaped her, how each small act of care and persistence had built trust and connection. She realized that life on the ranch was not just about work or survival. It was about being present, being patient, and nurturing the bonds that made a family. In the following weeks, Maya's confidence and comfort grew even more. She began to anticipate the needs of the household, preparing meals and planning chores with careful consideration. She taught Ethan small skills, from helping him understand the animals to showing him how to plant seeds in the garden. Jackson began to rely on her more openly, trusting her decisions and respecting her presence. The subtle dynamics of the household had shifted completely. Maya was no longer just a helper or a visitor. She was a central part of their lives. One afternoon, while the three of them were working together to repair the fence, Ethan climbed onto Maya's back in a playful attempt to reach a high post. She laughed, steadying him carefully, and Jackson watched with a quiet smile. The moment was ordinary, yet it was filled with connection, trust, and warmth. Maya realized that family was not about perfection. It was about showing up, caring, and sharing life's moments, both big and small. The bonds they had formed were strong and resilient, built on trust, love, and consistent presence. As the months passed, Maya also began to feel a deep sense of fulfillment in her own growth. She had arrived at the ranch uncertain and fearful, questioning her worth and her ability to belong. Now, she was confident in her role, proud of the home she was helping to build, and grateful for the trust she had earned from both Jackson and Ethan. The journey had been difficult, but it had transformed her life in ways she had never imagined. One evening, as they sat around the fireplace after a long day of work, Jackson spoke softly, breaking the comfortable silence. "You've changed things here," he said. "The ranch, the boy, everything feels different. Better. Because of you." Maya's heart swelled at the acknowledgement. She had not been expecting praise or recognition, only the quiet approval that had been given through trust and shared effort. But hearing it spoken aloud made her realize how much she truly belonged, how integral she had become to this family and this home. Ethan climbed onto her lap, leaning against her as she held him close. "I'm glad you stayed," he whispered. The simple words carried a depth of meaning that touched Maya deeply. It was not about being told she was loved or appreciated. It was about the bond they had built, the trust they had nurtured, and the quiet understanding that she was no longer an outsider. She was part of their family, chosen not by obligation, but by care, respect, and genuine connection. The night grew late, and the ranch settled into a deep, peaceful silence. Maya lay in bed, reflecting on the journey that had brought her here. She had faced fear, doubt, and uncertainty, yet she had persisted, cared, and grown. In the process, she had found a place where she belonged, a family that trusted her, and a life filled with purpose and quiet joy. She realized that true belonging was earned, nurtured, and built through consistent care, patience, and love. In the following months, Maya continued to grow with the family. She and Jackson developed a quiet companionship, a mutual respect and understanding that did not require words or declarations. Ethan thrived under her care, confident and happy, and the three of them shared countless small moments of joy, laughter, and connection. The ranch, once intimidating and lonely, had become a place of warmth, security, and belonging, a home they had built together. As the story drew to a close, Maya understood a simple truth. Life did not have to be perfect to be meaningful. Family was not about grand gestures or flawless behavior. It was about showing up, caring, and nurturing bonds that could withstand time and challenges. She had found her place, not because it was given to her, but because she had earned it through patience, effort, and love. And in that, she had discovered a life richer and more fulfilling than she had ever imagined possible. For the first time, Maya felt fully at peace. The fear, doubt, and uncertainty of her past had faded into memory. She had arrived at the ranch seeking survival, yet she had found so much more: trust, belonging, and a family she could call her own. And with that knowledge, she closed her eyes, letting the quiet rhythm of the ranch and the warmth of the home they had built together lull her into a deep, contented sleep.